So this is going to be a hopefully pretty brief video. I'm just going to walk you through a couple things we're doing this week. Mostly our week is going to consist of peer review. Um, there are a couple of things though here I want to show you in our module. These couple of videos here, you don't really have to do anything with. They're not, they're not part of an assignment or anything. These are mostly for your information, for your edification. They're review videos, probably. I use them in my 101 and 102 classes. And so they're not going to line up exactly with our reaction paper that we're working on. But I go over, I think, some important points about introductions and then about sort of the relationship between thesis statements and topic sentences and body paragraphs. So, um, I don't know, maybe you want a refresher. Maybe maybe that's not something that you covered as well as you'd like to have in your previous classes. Regardless, check them out if that seems like it's interesting to you. But again, we're not going to, turn in any work related to them. It's mostly to help you get this reaction paper done and squared away. Um, I have a note here on peer review. I guess I just open it up real quick. Um, let's see. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's on here. I think you should read it and check it out. Again, you don't have there's no assignment with this. But this is a good way to get us in a useful sort of frame so that we're all on the same page for peer review coming up. All right. Here is the question worksheet. We'll go over that in some detail in just a moment. Here's the link for our paper, our reaction paper. Um, that's where you're going to turn it in, submit it. And here is the blog for the week where we will conduct peer review. And we're going to go over that also um, for a few minutes. So why don't we, let's see, do I want to look at the questions first or the blog? Let's look at the blog first. Okay. Notice I have two rounds here. What that means is there's going to be plenty of reminders throughout the directions. You're to provide feedback, comments and feedback to at least two of your classmates. So that's what I mean by two rounds. Here's just some lead in to what we're doing. I have just reminding you that I've got some videos and some preliminary stuff on peer review, so check it out. I tried to approximate this so that it has a similar sort of intention and I guess procedure as if we were to do this face to face. It's just, asynchronously online. That's a bit of a challenge, but we'll do our best. Really, there's only two steps. I'll give a quick scroll so you can see this. Looks like kind of there's a lot of writing. There is. A lot of it's reminders, a lot of it's just little notes and stuff that I thought to tell you at the time. But basically, there's step one. Um, where's step two go? Here it is, step two. Step one's pretty straightforward. Post your rough draft. So when you scroll down to the bottom here, you're going to open up this window and you're going to either type out or you're going to copy and paste your rough draft into this window. Please do not use the attach button only, and please do not put your Google Docs link in here. Those will not receive any credit. We all need to see your typed out or your copied and pasted rough draft and then post that. Once you do, bingo bango, that's step one. Okay? That's that's half of it. I'm going to say this a few times. I always feel kind of like a jerk when I say this. I'm not trying to be. One of the ways that peer review works is as everybody's participating. One of the things that really messes things up is if somebody comes in, posts their rough draft, and then does not respond to their classmates. Because now what that does is it takes other classmates off of somebody else and puts it on that paper. And if you're not reciprocating, if you're not also contributing, somebody's going to be left with no comments and feedback on their papers. And that's the worst. That's the worst case scenario in peer review is to not get any comments or feedback. So it truly is better if you're not planning on responding to your classmates, just don't post your rough draft because you're not going to get credit for it anyway. The only way we're going to get credit for work this week is if we post a rough draft, number one, and then also comment on at least two of our classmates' rough drafts. That's how you get credit. I'm reminding you about this a bunch of times too. Please no attachments, no Google Docs typed out or copied and pasted. It's look, the discussion board this week's going to be super long because everyone's going to be posting rough drafts, and that's okay. We'll deal with it and we'll get through it. Okay, now the hard part that gets, I don't know, some classes pull it off, other classes it can be challenging. Step two, after you've posted your rough draft, all right, we're going to be using the peer review question sheet. We're gonna review that in just a minute. Why am I emphasizing that? Because when you go to your classmates' rough drafts, you're not supposed to just comment anything you want. You're not supposed to do the old, "Oh, I agree with you," or "Oh my gosh, what a great rough draft." That's not what we're doing peer review for. I've got a set of questions that are on a page, and everybody's going to be using that same question sheet. So, when you go to review your classmates' rough draft, you're going to use those questions to provide feedback to your classmates. All right. By the way, I have a note here. A lot of times students want to know what am I supposed to write about or how should I write it? All these kinds of things. My peer review questions, the way that I developed them is I basically paid attention to what I was thinking as I'm grading papers. Um, and I think I have 7 questions on that peer review question sheet. So those 7 questions are going to give you incredible insight into how I'm thinking, into what I'm expecting and what I'm looking for. So do pay attention to those questions. It almost acts like a sort of rubric in that way. All right. Again, I keep emphasizing this over and over because I know I'm going to get students who are they're going to go to their classmates' rough drafts. They're going to provide these little bitty paragraphs. That's not peer review. Peer review is using this question sheet. Once again, if you go if you go to your classmates' rough drafts and you don't use this question sheet, you're not going to get credit. All right. I'm being very clear and I'm repeating myself a bunch. You got to post your rough draft and you've got to use the peer review question sheets. I know this is, if we were to pull this off, that would be amazing. Um, in the past, I've tried thinking and I've considered making the due date for our rough drafts even sooner than it is because I want people to have enough time to make any changes based on their classmates' feedback. As it is, what happens is everybody usually waits till the very, very last minute. And, everything's a big rush. Um, I try to give everybody plenty of time, but I also with that, I don't know, it's sort of like the honor system, I guess. I hope that everybody is at least not late. Please try not to be late. if you're late also, that really does nobody any good this week. We have to be on time, we have to show up, we have to participate. And, if you don't, again, you get no credit for it. Um, Otherwise, peer review doesn't work. What good is doing peer review if you offer your insights and your feedback after the paper's due? That's pointless. All right. So here's some guidelines. I give you sort of a walkthrough right here, what you're supposed to do. After you've posted your rough draft, read through your classmates' blog posts. In other words, read through their rough drafts. You're not reading all of their papers. You're skimming them. You're getting a good feel for it. You're seeing maybe you'll find one that sounds interesting to you. That can always make peer review I don't know, somewhat pleasant. So after you've posted and after you read through and skim through some of the blog posts, you're supposed to select two, at least two rough drafts that you would like to engage with and provide some comments and feedback on. When you select a rough draft, it's gonna take some time for you to prepare your responses. I don't expect this to be done in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's going to take a while. You're going to have to read the rough draft. You're going to have to consider these questions, and you're going to have to write down some answers. In order to avoid too many people potentially selecting the same rough draft and thereby neglecting others. Um, so, in other words, what I'm saying here is there's a tendency for everybody to want to just choose the first one they come across. Try to resist that. Um, and we're going to explain why here. As you're scrolling through and you start to find some rough drafts you want to comment on, when you select um, a rough draft you want to work with, please add your name to the comments underneath it. All right. This is just the preliminary thing. You're reading through, you're skimming through, you think you find one. If you do, go down to the bottom, type in here, and just type your name out and put in the comment of somebody's post and push post. Why? Why are we doing that? This action will reserve that spot for you. In other words, well, I'm going to say it right here. Now, once you reserve your spot, now you can take some time generating your response, generating your comments and feedback according to the peer review question sheet. Um, Once you have done that, once you have written out your responses to those questions on the peer review question sheet, you come back to that same post where you put your name and you reply again. This time you type out or copy and paste all of your responses to those peer review questions. All right. So when you comment on your classmate's rough draft, and again, you got to do this twice, you're going to first type your name to reserve your spot. Then you're going to go away and type out all your stuff. And then you're going to come back and comment again, this time providing the comments and feedback. All right. Here's why we reserve a spot by putting our name. If, as you're scrolling through your classmates' rough drafts and you see that there's already two other people working on it, either by reserving their name or they've already written out their responses to the questions, please move on. Don't sit there and be the third or fourth or sixth or eighth person to comment on somebody's rough draft. Everybody should have two, at least. That way, everybody gets some comments and feedback. So when you're scrolling through, if somebody's reserved their spot already, two people, just move on. Go find somebody else to interact with. All right. I hope that's clear. That's an important part of this. Sometimes a little bit of discussion is generated by the comments and feedback. Sometimes things are unclear. So, you know, check back. after you provide your classmates with your comments, with your feedback, check back to see, a couple times. You don't have to sit there and watch it and smash the refresh button and all that, but just I don't know if y'all get alerts to this. I've never actually found that out. When somebody comments back on your post or anything like that. But just to see, make sure that nobody has any questions about the comments and feedback that you have, because it's sort of incumbent on you to clear things up. That's part of your job. Doesn't happen that often, but be aware of that. I'm going to say it again. Please use the peer review question sheet, not just however you want to. Or sometimes students just pick the questions that they want to answer, and that's it. Um, the intention is to use the entire peer review question sheet, all 7 questions. Now, let me say this. If you happen to have a rough draft that, let's say, is incomplete, um, or is in some way just missing parts, you can still write or at least put the number to the question and just put something like that. Well, this rough draft is missing this part, or it's incomplete, so I couldn't answer it. Just do something. Don't just leave things blank and don't just leave them off. If for some reason you feel like you have not gotten any comments or feedback and um, you want some help, let me know as soon as possible and I'll see what I can do to intervene. Um, and once again, I'm gonna keep reminding us of this. If you want credit this week, you've got to post your rough draft and you've got to participate by responding to a couple of classmates. Leaving either of those steps off results in no credit. One thing to keep in mind here also, you have a little bit less time to complete this blog. Normally our blogs are due on Saturday. This week they're due on Friday. And that's because, in other words, you have to post your rough draft by Friday. Try to get it done earlier, please. It's a great help to everybody if we can get this ball rolling soon, maybe midweek. But you have until Friday to post your rough draft. Then you have until the following day, Saturday, to post some comments and feedback. Because Sunday the papers are due. So everything's moved up a day because we're all going to need time to implement some revisions after peer review. That's the idea. I'm not putting any word counts or anything like that because there's plenty of questions on the peer review question sheet for you to respond to, so you'll generate enough writing. Don't worry about that. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and take a look, let's see, at the peer review questions. All right, where are we at? So number one, now I have this set up to where if we were gonna, I have this set up to where we were gonna, if we were going to do this in person, this is what the sheet would look like. So once again, you don't need to like write on this and upload it or take a pic. You don't need to do any of that. In your response, when you're responding to one of your classmates' rough drafts, just you can just put these numbers and you don't have to repeat the question. Just put number one and then type out your response. Number two, type out your response. That's the idea, okay? Provide feedback on the overall efficacy of the introduction to the rough draft you're working on. In other words, is it effective or not? Is it doing the things an introduction should do? Here you can rely on whatever resources you want, our course materials, our discussions, your own knowledge and experience. Um, that PowerPoint that I included in the module this week, that might be helpful. So this is you just discussing how effective or not um, the introduction to the rough draft that you're reviewing is. What is the central claim, the main idea, the thesis statement? What is the main point going on in this rough draft? identify it. Here, it might be helpful to sort of write it out. Here's what I think the thesis statement is. And um, if you go back and you review that on peer review document I showed you in the module earlier, you're going to see that peer review is not about us being experts. It's not about us being, so-called good enough to do this kind of work. Whatever skill you have, whatever experience and ability you have, that's fine. That's more than enough. What you're doing is you're providing your classmates an invaluable resource in being a reader who has something to say. If you get to this question, for example, and you're like, I don't know where the thesis statement is, you can put that. You say, you know what? I read the introduction 3 times. Nothing really is standing out that sounds like a thesis statement to me, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but that's what I think. If your classmate gets that feedback, they might say, wait a minute, I have a thesis statement. Maybe it's just not very clear. That's sort of the idea. That's how it works. We're not trying to be mean and snarky. We're not trying to be uber critical. We're just trying to offer some honest reaction to the reaction paper in this case. And that's fine. We can do that. To what extent has the author of the rough draft you're reviewing successfully, effectively summarized their chosen article? Please explain in detail why you decided as you have, and please include examples from the rough draft. In other words, um, how's the summary look? Is it remaining objective? Did it get way too into some subjective discussion? Did it start, you know, analyzing and offering all sorts of opinions and qualifying things already in the summary? Do you get an accurate representation of, um, what the article was about without having read it? Um, is the summary you're reviewing using effective authorial or attributive tags so you know the difference between when the student is writing and when the author is being summarized, that kind of thing. So just evaluate and assess the efficacy of the summary writing. Number 4 is describe how the rough draft that you're reviewing is organized. So what are the different parts? According to our prompt, we should see an introduction, we should see a summary, we should see many paragraphs of reaction, and we should see some type of concluding remarks. Um, what your job here in number 4 is, what are the different parts as you see it, not how you think it was supposed to be. Maybe a summary is there, but it just doesn't look like a summary. Maybe you can't tell it's a summary. Maybe there are 7 body paragraphs, but they don't look like they're reacting to anything. Maybe it looks like the paper leads off without an introduction. So, how do you think it's organized or structured? And offer plenty of evidence and examples of what you mean and how you respond the way you do. Number 5, to what extent does the rough draft effectively respond to the prompt overall? Um, how is it responding or reacting to the source? Is it speaking back to it? One of the major pitfalls with this assignment, as we've talked about, is students will misunderstand it and they will, instead of speaking back to their source, taking issue with it, they will sort of speak with their source in agreement. And that often turns into a disaster. It misses the whole point of the prompt. Um, so you get to offer some insight and some comments and feedback. How is it responding to the prompt? Is it doing the thing that the prompt wants us to do? Number 6, please try to identify the strongest part of the rough draft, being sure to discuss at length why and how you arrived at that conclusion. Um, One of the ways to sort of get at this is be very mindful of what the prompt is asking us to do. Does it do any of that stuff particularly effectively? That might be one way of responding to this question. If there's one moment or passage or a paragraph that really stands out, Maybe they really wrote a stellar introduction or conclusion. However you want, just identify what you feel like is the strongest part and elaborate why you think that. Finally, here, try to identify how this rough draft you're reviewing might respond more effectively. In other words, here, this is a nice way of saying what's the weakest part? What's the least effective part? And be sure um, to provide maybe some insight as to how they might go about making it more effective. That's always a nice thing to do for your classmates. A good teammate, a good partner in collaboration. This stuff down here, just general areas to consider. What is this? Go away. Um, you can comment on these things as you see them, but this is the le lowest priority stuff. All these things up here are much more important than, grammar and transitions and all that stuff, typos. If they stand out and you feel like saying something about it, go ahead. But otherwise, all your focus should be on these questions. We reviewed the blog, we got the questions. Um, yeah, I mean, be sure to, you got any questions, clarifications, concerns, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to have a lovely peer review week. See you there.